Resume debate on the landlord and tenant bill, a bill originating from the National Assembly, bills number 3 of the year 2021. Thereafter, the House will move into the Committee of the Whole, where a number of bills are set for consideration before the Committee of the Whole. The Intergovernmental Relations Amendment Bill, Bill number 37 of 2021 by the Chairperson Standing Committee on Matters Devolution and Intergovernmental Relations. The Law of Succession Amendment Bill, Bill number 15 of 2021 by nominated Senator Abshiro Halake. And finally, the Committee of the Whole will be resuming consideration on the preservation of human rights and enforcement of economic and social rights bill, this being a bill from the Senate, Bill number 21 of the year 2021. The Chairperson Sessional Committee on the County Public Accounts and Investment will be moving a motion on the adoption of the reports of the Sessional Committee on the County Public Accounts and Investment, and this is for the consideration of the reports by the Auditor General on the financial statements of various county executives for the financial years, and this is 2018 and 2019. The Elections Amendment Bill, Bill number 48 of 2021 by Nyeri Senator Ephraim Maina, is also another bill for consideration before the floor of the House this afternoon. The County Resources Development Bill, the Special Needs Education Bill, the Irrigations Amendment Bill, the Committee Groups Registration Bill, the Street Vendors and Protection of Livelihoods Bill, Bill number 7 of the year 2021, is also another bill that will be considered before the floor this afternoon. Besides the elections bill by the Senator for Nyeri County, the Senate is also set to consider the Elections Campaign Financing Amendment Bill, Bill number 51 of the year 2021 by Senator for Narok County, Senator Ledama Olekina. Similarly, the House will equally be considering a bill by Senator for Narok, the Elections Amendment Bill number 2, Bill number 43 of the year 2021. The Persons with Disability Amendment Bill is also another bill that the House is set to make an input on, and this particular bill is by Senator Aaron Cheriot and Senator Dr. Isaac Mwaura. A couple of reports from the Auditor General will also be tabled before the floor this afternoon, and that totals to 13 reports of how different county executives utilized their budgetary allocation, and this is for years ending June 2020 and June 2019. The Cotton Industry Development Bill, a bill by the Chairperson Standing Committee on Matters Agriculture, Livestock and Fisheries, is a bill at the second stage, and senators will this afternoon be making their contribution into that particular bill, this being Senate Bills number 55 of the year 2021. Nominated Senator Sylvia Kasanga will be moving a motion on the fast tracking of the cultural development in counties, that whereas Kenya is a multi-ethnic and multiracial country and with rich diverse resources, the Senate should formulate cultural development policies and matters initiatives to inculcate stronger and community values to safeguard Kenya's heritage and recognize local heroes and promote socio-economic opportunities in the counties. The business of the Senate is kicking off any moment from now. I'm now handing over for the live broadcast.
Honorable Senators, let's pray.
Good afternoon.
Almighty God, we beseech you to behold with abundant favor and blessings as your servants whom we have been pleased to call to leadership position in this republic. We seek guidance to treat and consider all matters shall come under deliberation in so just and faithful a manner as to advance the peace, prosperity, and welfare of our country and of those whose interests we have committed to a charge. Amen.
Number 1, administration of oath. Order number 2, communication from the chair. Order number 3, messages. Order number 4, petitions. Order number 5, papers.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to lay the following papers on the table of the Senate today, the 9th of March 2022, on behalf of the Leader of Majority. Number 1, report of the Auditor General on the financial statements of Kajiado County Youth and Women Enterprise Fund for the year ended 30th June 2020. Number 2, the Auditor General report of the Auditor General on the financial statement of the Nairobi City County Assembly Kalon Scheme Fund for the year ended 30th June 2019. 3, report of the Auditor General on the financial statement of Naivasha Water and Sanitation Company Limited for the year ended 30th June 2020. 4, report of the Auditor General on the financial statement of Samburu Water and Sanitation Company Limited for the year ended 30th June 2020. 5, report of the Auditor General on the financial statements of Nyandarua Water and Sanitation Company Limited for the year ended 30th June 2020. 6, report of the Auditor General on the financial statements of Nakuru Rural Water and Sanitation Company Limited for the year ended 30th June 2020. 7, report of the Auditor General on the financial statements of Bomet Water and Sanitation Company Limited for the year ended 30th June 2020. And finally, the report of the Auditor General on the financial statements of Eldama Ravine Water and Sewerage Company Limited for the year ended 30th June 2020. Thank you.
Senator Milgo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I've got 2 reports to lay on the table. Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to lay the following papers on the table of the Senate today, 9th March 2022. Reports of the Standing Committee on Education. 1, the statement regarding the plight of ECD teachers in counties countrywide. And 2, the Special Needs Education Amendment Bill, Senate Bills number 44 of 2021. Mr. Speaker, sir, allow me just to make a few comments on the first statement.
Please proceed.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, sir. The report on ECD teachers comes in the heels of a statement that was brought to the floor of this House by the Senator for Kitui, Senator Enoch Wambua. Apart from that, Mr. Speaker, very many times we've had a lot of petitions coming to this House on the issues of plight of ECD teachers. Mr. Speaker, sir, my committee was able to also proceed with that statement, and I was able to call on board a number of stakeholders to answer to this issue of ECD teachers. Mr. Speaker, sir, this statement was brought on 15 September 2021, and in the statement we were supposed to investigate reports that most counties pay ECD teachers below the gazetted government minimum wage in violation of Article 41(2)(a) of the Constitution. And 2, we were to establish who is responsible for streamlining the terms of service of ECD teachers as they are currently employed and remunerated under different terms of service, with some receiving a stipend instead of salary for work done since 2013. And number 3, Mr. Speaker, to establish the progress made by the county governments towards implementing the draft scheme of service of ECD teachers that was validated by various relevant agencies or stakeholders, including the Teacher Service Commission, the Salaries and Remuneration Commission, and the National Treasury. And number 4, Mr. Speaker, we were supposed to state the measures that have been put in place to ensure that county governments, including the Kitui County, engage ECD teachers on enforceable contracts with clear terms. Mr. Speaker, the committee embarked on an inquiry into the plight of ECD teachers in the counties countrywide, and during the process we were able to meet different stakeholders concerned with the matter. Among them were the Council of Governors, that is COG, the Ministry of Education, the National Treasury, the Teacher Service Commission, and the Salaries and Remuneration Commission. What came out of this, Mr. Speaker, is that we established that recruitment of ECD teachers is done by county governments from a pool of teachers registered by the Teacher Service Commission, and that the county governments are supposed to ensure that ECD teachers' recruitment policies are fully implemented. And 2, Mr. Speaker, there is an approved scheme of service, a detailed job description, and remuneration structure for all ECD teachers. And number 3, Mr. Speaker, whereas the COG issued advisory to county governments on the implementation of ECD teacher schemes of service, only 8 county governments are fully implemented them, and 16 are reported to be on the finalizing stage to bring on board all the teachers that is based on the scheme of service. While so the 3 county governments are not initiated any process at all to implement ECD teacher scheme of service. Therefore, these are the 3 county governments are the ones that are paying ECD teachers what I'm calling stipend, and some of them are even paid by parents And so normally when kids go to school, they'll be sent back to go and bring some 5 shillings or something of that nature to pay ECD teachers. Number 4, Mr. Speaker, that there are 42,457 ECD teachers employed by the county governments, out of which only 13,502 are on permanent and pensionable terms, while 28,955 are employed on contracts. Mr. Speaker, sir, there is a third category of about 4,563 caregivers who are engaged and remunerated by school management boards or the Parents Teachers Association. The committee further observed that there is more focus in terms of content and curriculum development on other levels of basic education by the Ministry of Education and the Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development, that is KICD, and GSC at the expense of the early childhood education, ECE, but education. And Madam, Mr. Speaker, I'm sorry. Mr. Speaker, you realize that ECD is the foundation of education. And with the competence-based curriculum, it will be a nightmare to be able to, for those kids, to be able to actually understand what is going on in the upper classes without a proper foundation in ECD. The committee, Mr. Speaker, also established that ECD centers have relinquished their physical facilities such as classrooms for use by host primary schools, leaving learners congested in 1 or 2 rooms and teachers without a staff room, which complicates their efforts to prepare and deliver lessons. And Mr. Speaker, some of them are even learning in some makeshift classrooms, Mr. Speaker. And I want to say here that these are very little kids, Mr. Speaker. We are actually trying to change their mindset. We have to actually provide them with a conducive environment to actually make them understand that this country loves them and education is a good thing, so that when they change the upper classes, they'll be able to join in a seamless manner. However, we treat very little kids. Some of the ECD centers, Mr. Speaker, we did discover that they did not even have wash materials, and therefore the little kids just are given a tiny classroom that is made, some of them are made on mapatis, and then at the end of it all, they are also asked to go and borrow wash facilities from neighboring villages. Mr. Speaker, sir, there is no specific budget from the Ministry of Education that is allocated to provide ECD services, and majority of the county government spend a great percentage of the education sector budgets on bursaries for learners at both secondary and tertiary levels, which are not default functions. Mr. Speaker, sir, it is quite unfortunate that maybe by a slip of the tongue, one of them told us that it is not, building wash facilities, building ECD classrooms, to not get a political mileage, as opposed to even giving out bursaries. And so I think we need to actually stand by authority as a house to ensure that the county governments take up the issues of ECD teachers and takes it up with a matter of seriousness it deserves. Mr. Speaker, sir, based on the observations, the committee therefore recommends the following: that all the county governments should implement the ECD teacher scheme of service, provide budgets for ECD teachers, salary increments, and the Council of Governors should submit a report to the Senate on the implementation status within 60 days after tabling this report. Number 2, Mr. Speaker, Council of Governors and other education stakeholders should review the job description and roles for the ECD teachers and submit a revised report to SRC for job evaluation within 90 days from the date of tabling this report. Mr. Speaker, sir, the COG and Teacher Service Commission and KICD should within 90 days after tabling this report establish modalities and create a collaboration framework on ECD teachers management, career progression, and capacity building. Mr. Speaker, sir, we did realize, we established that actually issues of capacity building is a nightmare when it comes to ECD teachers. Actually, any teacher is going to teach that ECD unless we stand by authority with issues ECD our senders and our learners in those particular areas. Number 4, Mr. Speaker, the county governments, in collaboration with their respective county assemblies, should consider enacting legislations aimed at increasing annual budgetary allocation to ECD sector to at least 10% of the county revenue. Mr. Speaker, sir, there is a motion I brought to this House some time back, and I was speaking to the same issue on 10% of the county revenue. I even did this before becoming chair of education, and if that one is followed up, and we have 10% of county revenue, we shall be able to turn around the education in our counties, because without a foundation, Mr. Speaker, I want to tell you the upper levels of education will be very shaky. Number 5, Mr. Speaker, that is recommendation from our committee, is that Parliament should expedite processing and the passage of the county government's grants bill 2021, that is the Senate bill number 35 of 2021, that speaks to issues grants, so that county governments can be given a grant, and this same grant should be ring-fenced to ensure that it is used in ECD centers. Sectors that are not actually very critical, like I said, Council of Governors, or rather the governors would prefer to give out bursaries which will give them political mileage, as opposed to actually paying ECD teachers, which is going to give our little kids a foundation for learning. All the time, Mr. Speaker, we keep saying a county and a country is as good as its education, and without a good education, a country cannot go very far, because it's there where you get the human resource to drive the economy. Mr. Speaker, sir, as I conclude, I wish to take this opportunity to thank all the members of the committee for their immense contribution during the inquiry and consideration of this statement that culminated in this report. The committee wishes to thank the officers of the Speaker and the Clerk of the Senate for the necessary support extended to it in the conduct and execution of its mandate. Mr. Speaker, sir, it is my pleasant duty on behalf of the Standing Committee on Education pursuant to Standing Order 48.3b to present the report of the Standing Committee on Education on the consideration of the statement on the plight of early childhood development education ECD teachers in the counties. I thank you.
Thank you, Chair. That was very good observation, and as well as very good recommendation. Chair, Standing Committee on Tourism, Trade and...
Sorry, Mr. Speaker, sir. I would have begged to have at least 1 or 2 comments to this statement. It was a very critical issue. Yes.
Order members. Senator, what is it, Senator Sakaja?
Thank you, Chair. Even as we thank the Chair of Education for that good report, I'd just like to make a few observations. Really would like your indulgence and that of the Secretariat to give a way forward to the House. Chairman, on the 1st of December, the Labour Committee tabled a report on the same matter. That is on the labour issues around ECD teachers. Because the biggest issue they have across the country is really labour issues. One, they don't have a harmonized scheme of service that's being implemented, and that now different counties have different standards. So you find that 2 classmates who went to teacher training school together, when they are posted, one is posted in Bomet, another one is posted in Kericho, which are right next to each other, one is earning twice the amount the other one is earning, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Getrum Suruve, Senator Sakaja is on a point of order. He's on a point of order.
You can't inform my point of order. So, Mr. Speaker, I just wanted to ask you, because, Mr. Speaker, in our report, I've heard there's some similar recommendations, but we asked, because as the chair has noted, there was a working document that was done by the Council of Governors together with SRC and TSC for the schemes of service, which has been not formalized. And so what we said is that in 3 weeks, the Council of Governors was to submit that document to the Senate, to present it, so that the Senate considers and ratifies it. So once we consider and ratify that working document, then there's an existing, it's binding to the counties. Thereafter, Mr. Speaker, instead of just asking different counties to budget, because other countries say, okay, we'd love to add it, but look at our fiscal position, we're actually not able to add, to double the salary or to reach that agreed amount. So you might find if the agreed amount is 20,000, maybe in Marsabit County they're being paid 25, but in Nairobi they're being paid 10. So you need to be able to bring Nairobi to 25 or to 20, whatever has been agreed upon. And so there was a need for the Senate thereafter, in the allocation of revenue and division of revenue, especially the allocation, to actually earmark certain funds so that we can harmonize all the ECD teachers in the country. So my ask is this, Mr. Speaker, that before this report or the recommendations are dispatched, because the COG will not act and they'll take it as an excuse to say there are two conflicting demands of us from the Senate, which is why, Mr. Speaker, the Secretariat should be harmonizing. We have a joint Secretariat, that the two reports are asking the COG, she's asked the COG to do something in 60 days, we had asked for something to be done in 3 weeks. So they first do that, and then based on that, there should be a uniform, direction from the Senate to the COG. That is the direction you need to give, Mr. Speaker, because it's a burning issue. You know how it is in Laikipia. I have so many nursery schools or early childhood schools in Nairobi. The state of it is terrible because of these teachers, and I know that's the case in each and every county. If we do that, then the Senate will not have acted in vain or dealt with it piecemeal, county by county. I want to thank the governor of Kericho. When he went there, he actually listened to us and he immediately issued directions. They brought them up to a certain level of salary. They were doing supplementary and Bomet as well. But you cannot do that based on the subjectivity of which governor agrees and which one doesn't. That's why the Senate must ratify that working document on the scheme of service. But I want to thank Senator Milgo. Incidentally, she was with me when we did that as well, because she's a member of the Labour Committee, and I think the Senate is the richer for having her in both Education and the Senate and Labour Committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Sakaja. Senator Cherargei.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A few comments only on the report that the able Chair of Education, Senator Dr. Alice Milgo, has presented before the House. I think last week, Mr. Speaker, sir, I did make an impassionate appeal that the issue of ECD teachers, we must have a seamless engagement with Council of Governors and other stakeholders so that we can have harmonized scheme of service. I think I was in the House when the Senator Sakaja's led committee tabled a report, and I'm happy with the committee of Senator Alice Milgo. They have given us a serious raft of recommendation, and one of them is harmonized schemes of service for our ECD teachers, like ensuring that they get a good salary increment, they get necessary personal emoluments as per the law, and they are protected under the labor laws. I think that is very critical. And another important point that they have made is that the Council of Governors must have a joint approach on the issue of ECD teachers. As I indicated last week, Mr. Speaker, Nandi County, and it is very sad that Nandi County ECD teachers are paid 10,000 per month without personal emoluments, without allowances, Mr. Speaker, and 10,000 shillings can do nothing. You can't even pay rent, you can't pay school fees, you can't pay NHIF or any other statutory deductions. And that is what is happening in Nandi County. And and I agree with Senator Milgo that governors are trying to use ECD teachers as campaign tool. For example, my governor a month or 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago called entire ECD teachers of Nandi County fed them, then lied to them that if you vote for me nomination, I will renew your terms in June. It is very unfortunate. We can't use our ECD teachers as a rubber stamp to ascend to political offices. After feeding them, singing to them campaign songs, promising them heaven on earth, it has never materialized, Mr. Speaker. And it is 10,000. I've heard other counties are paying less. We should have an harmonized payment of ECD teachers. And that is why I requested that even if the Council of Governors do not have a way of developing a harmonized scheme of service, they can even consult the Teacher Service Commission and the other stakeholders like NAT, KUPPET, and other educationists so that we can have a joint approach. And I think the best legacy, Mr. Speaker, of this Senate House in this 12th Parliament, before we go to the next Senate, the third generation of devolution, Mr. Speaker, is ensuring that we have ECD teachers on permanent and pensionable terms, harmonized schemes of service, and avoid these people who want to use ECD teachers as campaign tools, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, I made passionate appeal that the ECD teachers must be given their rightful share, they must be paid, and he has made a point that governors prefer giving out bursaries. And as I conclude, Mr. Speaker, they prefer giving out bursaries because it's more politically convenient to do so. Not knowing that these bursaries they are giving, and also I've seen governors also find it politically convenient to build ECD centers as opposed to taking care of the human resource of our ECD teachers. Because you can have beautiful buildings, you can have beautiful ECD centers, but when you have demoralized ECD teachers, and these are the foundation of our children, Mr. Speaker. For example, and ECD centers are very important. You know, they are like caregivers. They are like day caregivers. A child goes 2 to 3 years PP1. They can't even don't know how to use toilets. They don't know how to take care of themselves. It is ECT teachers who are cooperating, by the way, in short. They are cooperating, and therefore they have a unique place in our society. I know for Nandi we don't have even enough ECD centers. It has been a challenge because we would have a proper ECD center where our children can, even when it is rainy season, when it is cold, they can be able to learn in an environment. So I really want to thank the committee and look forward to that. I don't know whether that direction, Mr. Speaker, will be effective of directing or requesting the COG to give us a way forward. But I think the best legacy is to engage them and ensure they give us a way forward before we go for these elections of August, and I think that is very important, Mr. Speaker. And secondly, I can assure you, in the formation that I'm in, we'll ensure, Mr. Speaker.
I want to rule it this way. Senator Sakaja, Chair Labour, and Senator Milgo, Chair Education, you harmonize your report, because I heard what Senator Sakaja said. He said you are a member, or you were a member, at least, so that we have the same direction, instead of Labour and Education sending different recommendation. I would rule that you sit down and have harmonized recommendation. Thank you. Chair. No, I have ruled him out of order because we cannot be dealing with COG to give us recommendations. Yeah, that is out of order. Yeah. No, we are done. The time is off. The last paper is Chairperson Standing Committee on Tourism, Trade and Industrialization. If the chair is not there, the vice chair. Oh, Gertrude Msuruve.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I wish to table the report of the Standing Committee on Tourism, Trade and Industrialization on the consideration of the Street Vendors Protection of Livelihood Bill, Senate Bill number 7 of 2021, pursuant to Standing Order 143. Chair, before I lay the paper on the table, I would like to just comment that this bill seeks to provide a framework to regulate the business of street vending in the country. And Chair, the Honorable Speaker, it is very clear that we do not have a framework that regulates street vending. So when it comes to this bill actually has specific objectives, that is entrenchment of the rights of informal trading and regulation of informal trading, designation and use of public space for informal trading, effective organization and regulation of informal traders, and public participation in the regulation of vending. Honorable Speaker, this bill was first read on 11th May 2021, and it was committed to the Committee of Trade and Industrialization pursuant to Article 118 of the Constitution. And the committee held 3 sittings. 2 of them were in-house, just to get to understand the bill. And then the third one, the committee engaged the stakeholders. Honorable Speaker, the committee also had a public hearing on 14th of June 2021 with various stakeholders. A number of stakeholders were brought on board, like East Park was brought on board, COG was brought on board, and GEC were also present. Honorable Speaker, on 18th of May 2021, the committee placed advertisements on local dailies, local radios, calling for public participation and submissions. And following that advertisement, the committee received submissions from East Park, COG, and GEC. Following the submissions, Honorable Speaker, the committee observed and made the following recommendations. First of all, the committee observed that the Street Vendors Protection of Livelihood Bill is timely, and if it is enacted, it will provide the much needed framework to regulate the business of street vending. And Honorable Speaker, it is very clear that when it comes to street vending, there is no regulatory framework, and this retards the business of especially common wananchi, who we really seek to defend. So the committee observed there was no legal framework, and also, Honorable Speaker, the committee also observed that there are challenges when it comes to street vending. So this bill comes in timely to ensure that those challenges are brought, to an end. The committee also observed that the specific objects of the bill as provided in clause 3 of the bill are in line with part 1 and part 2 of chapter 4 of the Bill of Rights of the Constitution. And the committee also, the bill also outlines the respective functions of the national government and the county government. The committee also observed...
Senator Gertrude Msurve, you are just supposed to table the report. The report. I just give leeway just for some few comments, but now You have gone beyond.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Just to, before I lay the report, Honorable Speaker, I was just bringing on board the fact that this report brings in the functions of the national government and the county government, which are very important in ensuring that street vending is a business that is not ridiculed, and it is also given a status. So, Honorable Speaker, following your instruction, Honorable Speaker, I beg to lay the following paper on the table of the Senate today, 9th March 2022. The report of the Standing Committee on Tourism, Trade and Industrialization on the Street Vendors Protection of Livelihood Bill, Senate Bill number 7 of 2021. As I thank everyone else who participated. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I repeat.
Next order.
Order number 6, notices of motion. Order number 7, statements.
Senator Falhada. Senator, you can go to the dispatch box.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise pursuant to Standing Order 47-1 to make a statement regarding the rampant but underreported cases of minors suffering in the hands of the domestic workers / house helps. Mr. Speaker, last week there was an incident of young Andy Muyuri Kibe who died from internal injuries he sustained, allegedly from attacks by one Maureen Nyamboke, who was the house help. The house help was later arrested, and investigations into the incident are still ongoing. In Mombasa, a 21-year-old woman who confessed to filming herself defiling a 4-year-old boy and posting it online was sentenced to life in prison by senior resident magistrate Florence Macharia. The investigating officer of this particular case unearthed how child pornography syndicates collaborate with house helps to abuse children and film them pedophilic acts. Mr. Speaker, early last year, a house help stabbed 2 minors after disagreement with her employer, who later sacked her. Instead of taking her marching orders kindly after the sack, she stealthily crept back to her employer's residence in her absence and assaulted the same children ostensibly to get back at their mother. Mr. Speaker, this incident should remind parents of the dangers the young ones are exposed by the same people they have entrusted with giving care and security to them. The rate at which minors are being subjected to maltreatment by caregivers is quite alarming, to say the least. Mr. Speaker, sadly, this case and many more remain underreported, yet they have impacted negatively on parents whose minors have fallen victims to such abuse, as well as the victims who survived such ordeals. Such abuse often results in problems associated with advanced childhood experience, ACEs, result in a problem, Mr. Speaker, with a significant increase in the risk of health problems such as heart disease, stroke, or even diabetes, as well as mental health problems like anxiety, depression, and post-traumatic stress. Indeed, 1 out of 3 diagnosed mental health conditions in adulthood are directly related to ACEs. With such a grim outlook, Mr. Speaker, it is advisable for prospective parents to obtain relevant documentations such as a photocopy of identification card of the house help for future reference. Parents are also advised to be aware of such employees' physically or permanent address and telephone contact, as well as any next of kin that can be contacted should the need present itself. They should also endeavor to take a clear photograph of the employee and make sure to contact the former employer if any of the relevant information regarding the individual. However, these recommendations, which could help in checking or reducing such incidents, they are often disregarded, especially in the middle class households, possibly due to the employer's desperation to get the next house help, or due to the legal implications that accompany such measures or inquiries. It is imperative that parents carry out due diligence before onboarding any individuals as an employee offering these important services in order to ensure the safety of our children, if for nothing else. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Sakaja Johnson.
Mr. Speaker, just very, very briefly, I initially wanted to comment, then I thought I shouldn't comment because some statements just make you upset as a parent and angry. But, our work is not to be angry or upset, it's to provide solutions. Mr. Speaker, it's really disheartening what is happening in this area of domestic work. There's a bill I brought in 2015 that we passed that created an authority that, Mr. Speaker, if that authority was working as it should be, the National Employment Authority, instead of just looking at external domestic labor migration, even locally, Mr. Speaker, it was supposed to be like the National Employment Bureau, where, Mr. Speaker, anyone seeking for a job or anyone who's getting employment should have been on their database, that they vet and accredit, such that if today you want a plumber, today you want a house help, you go to that database, this somebody accredited, vetted even by NIS, and then you can get them to your house. Parents are at a loss, number one. You entrust somebody with your child. You go to work, you're paying them a salary, you don't know what is going to happen. A child is at risk at the place that should be the safest to them, at home. It's extremely, extremely disheartening, and I think for those cases that have been, mentioned and found, the harshest, law should be applied to them. But, Mr. Speaker, even as parents and as employers, we must look at ourselves. Very many employers are mistreating these house girls. Very many employers, I've heard of cases where these domestic workers are not given food, or they're told I know someone where they sleep at the balcony. They're told you don't eat what the family is eating. You cannot treat somebody as a second-class person and expect them to treat your child with dignity. These are also human beings, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I think it's give and take. We need to have sanity in our society, but there's been a serious breakdown in who we are as a people. And I think if there's something urgent that we need to look at as leaders, even outside Parliament, is what is this moral breakdown that is happening in our society. From the case of the young lady on Wangari Maathai Road, which was the ultimate paradox, that expression from those border riders was something different. Mr. Speaker, yesterday I saw a video of Kenyans stealing rice from a truck that overturned. Decent people stealing sacks of rice and I think other foodstuffs. There was a smartly dressed lady, her husband has opened the boot of their car for her to bring, and the person recording is asking, why are you stealing? There is such a serious breakdown in our society. We must do soul searching as a country. Mr. Speaker, we've become competitive to a fault. We have no regard for other people. And if you want to know the state of a country, look at how people behave on the roads. You just want to get ahead, and you can never get ahead when you're trying to get even, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it's a serious problem. Thank you, Senator Falada, for bringing it. I don't know how the authorities can look into everybody's house. There's only so much the government can do. There's only so much senators and legislators. You cannot legislate on morality. We cannot make a law on kindness. We cannot make a law of common sense, of decency. That you have people working in your house, you're mistreating them, you're punishing them, some it's verbal abuse. And ask yourselves, you find some families, every 3 months there's a new house help. Who is the problem? Is it the house helps or you? As Kenyans, we must ask ourselves that question. Who is the problem when there's this high turnover? So everybody must audit themselves, look into yourself. What is wrong with us? Mr. Speaker, the biggest conversation this country must be having. I know there have been attempts to have certain conversations, I don't know, BBI, whatnot. It's about just our morality and who we are as a people. That is where the problem is. Once you address that, our values, our value system, there's no person who can be elected president who will change our value system. There's no governor who will change your value system. There is no act of parliament we can pass here in the Senate called value system, common sense, and morality. But we need leadership to talk and let us find out, where is the church? Where is the mosque? Where are the imams? Where are our leaders in society who can find out what is this that is burning, that makes a young person think I can go strip that woman and express my anger because I am lacking? We're not demons. Are we animals in this society? So I think that statement should really be outrage and a call for us as a country to go back to prayer, to go back to God, to think deeply, to soul search, and to just have a place of decency, Mr. Speaker. So that's all. I didn't want to comment because I have a 3-year-old daughter. I'm very happy and I'm very honored that my domestic staff take care of her very well. They're amazing. Maggie is amazing. I'll even mention her name in Parliament. I don't know how many house helps have been mentioned in Parliament. She's amazing. And I can rest easy when I know she's at home. But because also I treat them with respect. What about the rest of us here? Mr. Speaker, I've had colleagues here talking to their PAs, and you want to go under the table. How people here talk to their staff. You talk to your staff like they're slaves. So if you're talking to a professional staff in Parliament like that, how are you talking to your house help at home? And then you get shocked when this happens. The Speaker of the House of Commons, the former Speaker, my friend, incidentally, Mr. Bekro, has been banned for life from accessing the House of Commons because of bullying. Do we discuss bullying in the workplace? In this Parliament? In the Senate? In our corporates? There's a lot of soul searching we need as a society, Mr. Speaker. Let me leave it at that.
Did you say Senator Sakaja, did you say he's your friend?
He's an acquaintance, and I think possibly immediate former friend, but someone I know. Okay. But it's tabia mbaya, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Gertrude Musuruve.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for this opportunity. I thank Senator Falhada for bringing this issue on the floor of this House. And indeed, there are cases, many cases when children have suffered in the hands of their house help. Some of them have been burnt. Some of them have been exposed to pornographic, pictures, like Senator Falhada has mentioned. And this actually affects children even when they're growing up. They may live without confidence because of the treatment they get when from house helps. Honorable Speaker, I remember at one point when I was when I was teaching some of the units that deal with psychology, the study of people's mind, human mind. Sometimes you find that people react as from something. Like, for example, if you want to beat someone and you are not able to beat the person, you can have displaced aggression elsewhere. So sometimes households react out of that aggression that they've been maltreated, so they do it on children. And I think it's good to investigate also ourselves and find out how also are we treating these households. I remember, Honorable Speaker, just to give an experience, when I came from India after cancer treatment, I was not able to walk for almost 3 months, but I had a househelp who was very empathetic, and she just told me, I will not leave this house until you have recovered and you're able to even stand on your own. So I think when it comes to house helps also, it has to do with personality of house helps. So we bracket them as they're not fair, but not all of them. There are some who have displaced aggression. There are some who are bitter from a long time. But I think there's also need for us to see how we can have a rapport with house helps, because they matter so much in terms of bringing up our children. When we are away from our houses, they're the parents who remain there. So in the event that they're not happy with their employers, chances of them displacing the anger on children are very high, and they can easily do a lot of harm to children. Some of them even cause disability. You know, some will even bang the children, you know, on the floor until a child can even become mentally retarded. But you may not know what caused mental retardation. So there is also need to do what Senator Falhada said, to have documentation of house helps, get to know where they come from and all that. But I think it is also good to use wisdom and put a camera somewhere before the house help, before you get to know the house help, to see whether the house help is worth staying with you or not. Or if you have a house help and from day one or week one she complains that the work is too much, I'm not able to do this and that, just let her go, because for the safety of the children, I think it is better to play it safe. But I want to thank Senator Falhada for bringing this on the floor of this house, because it is something that is real, you know, on the ground, and we have to see how to arrest it without doing any legislation, because our legislation may be difficult, but in the event that the video shows that you know, a house help has been you know, maltreating a child, then it becomes a police case. It becomes a criminal case. Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for this statement. I thank Senator Falhada.
Thank you, Senator Halake Abshiro.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support this statement by my sister, Senator Falhada. As a young mom, I'm sure she's concerned and would like something done about this. But I'd like to mention also that, Mr. Speaker, there's a general lack of, there's some sense of lawlessness or desperation or mental health or breakdown that's going on in our society. You saw what happened on Wangari Maathai Road the other day. You saw what happened in many places, people turning on each other, our policemen turning their weapons on the people they're supposed to be you know, protecting. Cases of suicide even, you know. So there's something really happening, and that beyond even just us looking at the caregivers or domestic workers that are abusing our children, because the majority of domestic workers are very good people. They work for us. They've helped us, especially as working moms, to make sure that we actually get to come here and to do all our work. But there's this general breakdown, the general lawlessness, the general lack of values, the general desperation that our country is experiencing, and that is making people take it on the persons close to them. I'm not excusing it where criminal offenses have been committed, and we must of course look at the well-being and welfare of our children, especially as more and more moms go to work, as more and more women are having to fend for their children and therefore are having to leave their children with domestic workers. But I'd like to say the majority of domestic workers are very good, decent human beings, but the few that have done these things are also part of society, which society is now becoming really desperate. So as leaders, I don't know what we need to do, and I don't think laws or legislation and statute laws and these kinds of things are going to help us. We just need to look at what is happening. Why are our people so desperate as to turn on each other, as to turn on minors, as to turn on women, and violence is becoming normalized at every level, and therefore we just need to get to the bottom of this, Mr. Speaker. And I think my Senator Falhada has done well to highlight it in this area, and if every section is looked at, there's these kinds of things where we're turning on each other, we're turning on the people that are most vulnerable, we're turning on, and there's just going to be, going forward, a very scary picture of our country's social fabric actually disintegrating. Why is this so? I don't know if it's poverty. We don't know if it's just general lack of, or just general indiscipline, but we need to do something, not just as leaders, but as a country. We need to start relooking at our values. We need to start looking at what is causing this. Is it that when people are desperate, they are starting to lose their humanity? Is that they're starting to lose their dignity and that they don't care anymore? We don't know what it is. But again, there's a lot of mental health issues, and the mental health issues are cutting across every part of the society, including even our domestic workers, who are perhaps even subjected to a lot of stress themselves by ourselves sometimes. I'm not saying that should then make them do that to our kids, but there's just general mental health outbreak that is actually causing some of these things that would otherwise have been something that nobody would do. Even in war, women and children were always spared, but now it's as if we are turning on each other, and we need to go to the bottom of it. And I think that looking at our mental health issues would be a good place to start, because I don't think any right-thinking person would hurt a child or kill a child or do these kinds of pornographic acts on children. It's just becoming one of these things. Is the access to these kinds of things within the social media, is the access also causing these kinds of things? Are we seeing a situation where perhaps the world is becoming a global village, and these kinds of bad behavior or bad filters are coming through? We don't know what it is, but as leaders, I think this is something we should be aware of. We should start really seriously thinking, how do we lead our country, our people, and look at some of these things. And because this particular one is facing the most vulnerable of our community, which is our children, something has got to be done. I don't believe that something is laws, because again, laws are as good as what is implemented, and laws tend to be correct, not preventive. They tend to most of the time be curative, meaning that after the person has committed the crime, then it's punishment that ensues. So I don't know what it is, but I think this is something we need to look at. We need to look at what is happening, because really, and this is coming at a very good time, as Senator Falhada has highlighted, at a time when also we're coming, it's an eve of elections. And during these elections, our attention, especially we who are in politics, will be diverted to the electioneering period. What is then going to happen to different people? So, Mr. Speaker, I think we're seeing, be it our sectors, that our transportation sector. Remember, a few years ago, it was the matatus that used to be a problem. Now, the boda. And again, the boda has been a sweet and sour. We have, bodas have been the ones who have provided the most efficient transportation system. They've provided the most, it has also contributed to our economy, in the sense that the mamamboga is using the boda to get to their markets. It's a very useful service they're providing, but at the same time, what is causing the stress that they have? Is it that the money is not enough? Is it that they're underemployed as much as they now have an employment? So these are some of the things, and I think these kinds of stresses and kinds of mental breakdown needs to be looked at. And I think we need, as leaders, to actually dig deeper to the cause of these things, as opposed to the
cure for this thing. I thank you and hope that we can find a solution, because I don't think I stand here to provide a solution, but to give my opinion on it, and that it's much bigger and much more deeply rooted than just the manifestation of it. I thank you and I support and I congratulate Senator Falhada.
Thank you. Senator Samson Cherargei, on your statement, not commenting on this because of time, on your statement.
Mr. Speaker, sir, request for statement on the proposed introduction of automated tea plucking machines to farmers in Nandi and in Kenya at large. Mr. Speaker, sir, I raise pass one to Standing Order 48-1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Agriculture on the proposed introduction of automated tea plucking machines to farmers in Nandi and in Kenya. In the statement, the committee should, 1, state why the government has resolved to introduce the automated tea plucking machines to farmers without considering the thousands of manual laborers who will be rendered jobless if these tea plucking machines are introduced in our estates, in Nandi Hills constituency and other parts in Nandi and across the country. Mr. Speaker, sir, provide the exact number of tea plucking machines already acquired by tea estates and companies in Nandi County. Number 3, explain why the ministry wants to conflict with the labor laws by rendering thousands of laborers jobless without considering their fate and livelihoods if these machines are introduced. Mr. Speaker, sir, and finally, state the status of implementation of the Tea Act 2020, which was passed by both houses, the Senate and the National Assembly, which provides for a tea levy to be levied on exports and imports of tea, state a total amount of revenue collected, and the reasons why it has not helped to standardize and stabilize tea prices in Nandi County and across the country, Mr. Speaker. And most of the tea estates and companies have introduced these tea plucking machines and tea plucking machines across the many tea estates in Nandi County, and some of the tea companies already have acquired them. But I think because some of them fear the public repercussions, they are hiding it. So we need the government to investigate, and the Committee of Agriculture on the way forward on this issue. I thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Thank you. Senator Milgo.
The chairman.
Do you want to comment on that?
Now that the chairman is here, let me allow him, because I under to speak on behalf of Labour Committee. But
okay, and it should be brief.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think this is, let me thank Senator Cherargei for bringing this statement. And these two issues are very critical. First of all, the issue of the tea plucking machine that is being introduced now in the factories. I'm sure my chair Labour will be able to expound further. But then I think in a short while, maybe that will be the way to go, based on the fact that we started the tea estate. They explained to us how it is expensive to use manual labor. But then our major challenge is the inflation. A few minutes ago, we got a statement about abuses by our house helps. But I think looking into that, there is something further to that, apart from just the physical issue we are looking at. Yesterday, we were treated to the idea, the issue of Nairobi case, something further to that. So what we are saying is, the more we take away jobs from our people, the more we are creating problems to ourselves. And I think if machines are going to be introduced, I think something else should be done so that we still need to engage the human resource to that is manage these machines, and then at the same time they should be paid that is the commensurate amount of funds, because we did realize in the TSA that even the workers, the 2 workers that are pushing the machine, a very heavy machine, and in a short while those workers can easily fall down dead, because even their hands may not even be able to function normally come the future. So I think we need to streamline issues of the machine before we begin to observe into our tea plugging either estates or maybe in the villages. Otherwise, I think I support the fact that we need to do investigations further to avoid sending our workers home and become helpless.
Senator Sakaja, Chair Labour, and maybe you can comment something on efficiency of the machine.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. A lot of the statements coming today have a labor component, and the issues that we've had a chance to look at, some are ongoing. And as I always say, there's always 2 sides, to a coin. A lot of these tea companies that are they're growing, the growers are operating on leases of Kenyan land, whether it is in Nandi County, whether it is in Kericho. There are a lot of multinationals. Bomet has the largest number, but people don't know. Kericho is known to be the real home. And Mr. Speaker, normally you'd expect that there is a direct return when you're holding that land in trust for the people who are, the locals. And locals you'd expect to have not just priority, but the numbers of them employed should be high. There must be that return. Now, globally, there's been the issue of productivity and competitiveness, such that a company, and my committee did a visit to James Finlay in Kericho and Bomet County. It straddles both counties, and we could see the catch-22 situation. James Finlay was employing 12,000 people, and now it has moved down to 6,000 because of mechanization, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, if you look at many others, whether it is Sassini and whatnot, many of them have gone fully or partially mechanized or automated. There have been questions even in the House of Commons in the British Parliament about not just the efficiency but the effects of those machines on the people. Many of them have been debunked, but still when we sat down with these farmers and the unions, you could see there's a lack of proper engagement and participation. Mr. Speaker, if you look at the wages that have been entered into, and one of the things, because we're doing a report on James Finlay, is that if you look at the CBAs, and on this one I must fault what do you call it, Consortium of Trade Unions, the COTU, because the Central Organization of Trade Unions entered into CBAs on behalf of this the pluckers. And in that CBA, Mr. Speaker, if I could show you an example, there are different categories of the workers. There's an amount that is given to that tea plucker per day based on the kilos and whatnot that they're able to collect. There is then also an amount for what they call field work. But Mr. Speaker, the question I posed at James Finlay, and I'm glad I've even discussed further with the management, is that you're fully mechanized because they have 100% mechanized. Yet you're still using a CBA that had no provision for wages on mechanization. I don't know if you're getting me. So the person, the worker who is running the machine of the mechanized tea plucking is being paid under a CBA of manual labor. One, you've reduced from 12,000 to 6,000, and you're paying them based on what they're calling field work, which is less than the plucking. So the first thing that COTU must do, and the first thing that the leadership of Kericho and Bomet and Nandi must do, is to make sure there is a renegotiation of all of those CBAs to incorporate the current technology that is being used there, Mr. Speaker. And that is for the current situation on the ground. I'll table this later, Mr. Speaker, about the wage increments on the CBA, which has been above inflation. And now this comes to the other side of the debate. Now, many of these multinationals, if you go to the headquarters in London, all they see, they do not see Mama Cherotich or Afula, because there are many people from Western who are doing the tea plucking. They're just seeing a balance sheet and they're seeing profit and loss. And the more that these tea factories become unprofitable, they will pull the plug. So there are certain interventions, Mr. Speaker, that also government must do, because this is a great source of livelihood and employment. And Senator Cherargei wants to be, I think, governor of Nandi. He must listen. I think, are you still senator? Governor. Whichever one you want. Because these are your people. The first thing, Mr. Speaker, there must be specific direction on the agricultural policy and the national tea policy to stipulate quality standards and parameters of Kenyan teas. Kenyan teas are highly sought after, but even an element of this mechanization is reducing the quality, Mr. Speaker. Number two, the provisions on Tea Act 2020 to enhance value and encourage production of quality, a capacity needs assessment of the tea value chain in Kenya by KIPRA has been done. And that needs, Mr. Speaker, to be implemented. And then they need to separate the distinctly different sectors, the large growers, smallholder farmers under KTDA, the independent producers, Mr. Speaker, and to respond to each differently. And fiscal policies to minimize taxes. Because, Mr. Speaker, if we do not subsidize these tea factories and the tea, these companies, from the large growers to the small growers, I promise you, in the south, in the North Rift, yes, Kericho County, yes, Bomet County, you're going to Nandi County, in the next 2-3 years, there's going to be a serious breakdown of that society, because from 12,000 they moved to 6,000. That's one company. They could probably go to 3,000, and what are they going to do? And they're occupying large swaths of land. So, Mr. Speaker, I see the side of the people. There's the issue of our exports versus total returns since 2010. We have all of this and we'll be tabling this. But you must, as a bare minimum, before we address the larger interventions by the national government on the tea sector, we must have a renegotiation of all the CBAs for the companies that have mechanized, because the CBAs are about manual plucking. It cannot be the same. It takes a skill. And those machines take a toll. They're not simple things. It is not a lawnmower. It is not a small thing you're pushing around, Mr. Speaker. Yeah? So we must renegotiate, and we're going to give a timeline. So, Mr. Speaker, I beg your indulgence that even as his statement, I think will be responded to by which committee, I don't know. If it is mine. Agriculture, we'll bring the labor aspect, Mr. Speaker, in 2 weeks. We have a retreat next week in Mombasa, and my committee will then bring the full report on James Finlay, because that was a direct question that was asked on James Finlay. And James Finlay is a good company. In fact, they asked for intervention. They wanted to do power production to help subsidize their costs. The county government of Kericho had sat on that document for so long. But this breakdown, the Senate, through one phone call, I just made a phone call to the governor, and they have gotten the approval to do the power production in Kericho, which will reduce at least their cost so they can take care. I can see the manager and the team, they actually want to help, but they're constrained by the vagaries of the economy. So we'll have a balance. We'll give a report that addresses both issues, Mr. Speaker. I thank you.
Thank you. Senator Cherargei, what's it?
Information to Senator Sakaja that in that statement is this aspect of labor part, but it largely is the labor agriculture. And secondly, Mr. Speaker, sir, is on the issue. I want to say, as of now, when you go to Nandi Hills sub-county or Nandi Hills constituency, most of the young people are now standing on the roadsides because there is an introduction of tea plucking machines. And those tea plucking machines, they are very heavy. They take even chameleon, all the dirt. So, but it's unlike that when you are plucking using your hands. So you can imagine the quality of our tea will also go down. So my worry, for example, in parts of Nandi Hills constituency, part of Nandi, where these tea plucking machines will be introduced, in the next 1 or 2, 3 to 5 years, there will be no young people will be engaged, and most of them will be idlers, and we'll see cases of drug abuse, insecurity, among many others. And finally, I want to agree with him that there must be renegotiation of CBA. And I think KOTU must be called out, because it looks like KOTU did go with bed. Yes, it is the Secretary General. Francis Atwoli, the famous, who signed the CBA to sell out our workers, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, Mr. Francis Atwoli must be called out. He has abandoned the workers, the downtrodden, and gone to politics of the day instead of, and you know, Kotu, I don't think Kotu is one person. I think Kotu must take their rightful position. Like the way we sue Kosatu. Is it Kosatu in South Africa? Where they take serious labor issues. So I think the Kotu at this point, and all workers who are watching, even in Nandi and across the country, they must know that it is Kotu who negotiated their CBA, and they sold their birthright of ensuring that they get fair labor practices in our tea companies. Mr. Speaker, finally, I talked to some of the tea companies, and they're asking me, why are you complaining, Senator? And it is Kotu who negotiated some of these CBAs in terms of introduction of tea plucking machines in Nandi County and across Kericho, Bomet, and many other counties. I thank you, Mr. Speaker, for that intervention.
Mr. Speaker, based on that information, and I thank him for informing me, because I was on the floor, I just want to let him know that, Mr. Speaker, in as much as it was the SG who signed it, Francis Atwoli, he signed it in his capacity as the leader. You know, it's a coalition of, you know, of different trade, central organization of, and so him coming from the planters and, you know, growers union, signed it back then. Maybe it has not come to his attention that these issues, because he's been also a bit busy, but maybe it has not come to his attention that these people are suffering and that CBA must be reorganized. Mr. Speaker, mechanization started in the 80s when James Finlay in 1982 went to look at a boba tea harvester. Yes, it is a labor issue, because the labor cost in tea production is 40 to 50%, and that's what we've seen. But as I've mentioned, and from what they're bringing us, for instance, that power generation, the power cost has gone up 130%. If they improve that, that reduces, it gives them a bit of headroom to renegotiate the CBA. The fertilizer cost that this government is not subsidizing, the fertilizer cost is 130%, Mr. Speaker, has gone up 130% in the last 10 years because of oil and electricity. High fertilizer cost, 140% since 2010, Mr. Speaker. There's a lot we can do as a country, because we will not stop technology, but you can be able to make sure the rollout is slow, the rollout is phased out, and meanwhile, those who then get the jobs in those mechanized, you know, farms, Mr. Speaker, are able to be paid well under a negotiated CBA based on the savings we make from fertilizer, which has gone up 140%, and energy, which has gone up 130%, which is why I'm happy, and I thank Governor Chepkoni for having now approved that power generation in Kericho, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. What is it, Senator Kajwang?
Mr. Speaker, I've been following the conversation and the statement request by Senator Cherargei online, but because it's difficult to contribute online, I opted to come to the House. The reason why we ask for statements on the floor of the House is to get the response of the executive and to get clarity on policy measures taken by the executive. It then becomes difficult, Mr. Speaker, if we raise the request for a statement, and then as a House, we go ahead to respond to it, and then we continue to debate, and then we go further, Mr. Speaker, to name persons who are not members of this House and blame them for some of the problems that are cited in the statement. What I thought would be the right approach, Mr. Speaker, was for the relevant committee that you're going to decide on to come up with feedback on the very three clear and specific issues that Senator Cherargei raised, so that once we get that response, then we can debate the feedback from the executive. But, Mr. Speaker, the reason why I rise on a point of order is that I've had allegations about persons sitting in Kotu signing CBAs on behalf of workers. I don't know where that information comes from, and I thought that that kind of information would be coming from the executive rather than from fellow senators. So, Mr. Speaker, I think my point of order is really, when we request for a statement, it is not for, we don't have ministers in this House. In fact, I was happy when the chair of the Labour Committee concluded by saying that the matter is going to agriculture. Because if it was going to the Labour Committee, then it would be completely out of order, because he spoke like the Labour minister. He had a lot of facts. He responded as if he sits in that office. So, Mr. Speaker, let us remember that we as senators, we represent the people, we represent counties, we do not represent the executive, and we should not be seen to be speaking on behalf of the executive. We should bring the ministers to this house, particularly the T Act, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, of all the progressive laws that this house has passed, it is the T Act which stands out as one of the greatest work of legislation. So we need to bring the minister here and put the minister to task on implementation of that act. Let us not proffer explanations. Let us not proffer answers on their behalf. Let us bring those ministers here.
Okay. Thank you, Senator Kajwang. One thing, because I was listening and following, Senator Sakaja was just giving information of what he knows. He's not answering on anything. He was just giving information which is in public domain. Senator Sakaja, not on that one, but on your statement. On your statement.
I don't know why Senator Kajwang is shocked that I have a lot of facts and information, yet he knows I went to a very good school, which he had attended years before me. And I'm grateful he's come to defend my own uncle. But as a senator is responsible for statements of fact. It's a fact that he signed that CBA, but also it's a fact that his same organization will help deal with it, and that's what we're asking for. Mr. Speaker, pursuant to Standing Order 48.1, I rise to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Finance and Budget on the financial status of Nairobi City County in view of the medium-term debt management strategy paper for the financial year ending 30th June 2023, recently tabled by the county government, proposing the sale of county assets to honor some of its debt obligations. Mr. Speaker, in this statement, the committee, led by Senator Kibiru, should provide a detailed status of all of the assets and liabilities of the Nairobi City County that they own directly, through its agencies, and also through the Nairobi Metropolitan Services. All assets and liabilities being held under those three. Number two, outline the strategies put in place by Nairobi City County towards settling all of its debts, which are now standing at 76.9 billion. Number three, provide a status report of the 4.4 billion loan owed to the Kenya Commercial Bank by Nairobi City County, including the procedures following in procuring that loan, Mr. Speaker. Number four, explain why the county government is defaulting on its loans that have led to accumulation of penalties and interest, which may make the county government lose its credit rating and hinder its borrowing in future when there's a future governor and government in Nairobi. And five, explain how the county government of Nairobi will fund its budget if it implements the proposal to dedicate one of its source revenue, which it says, to the repayment of a single loan to KCB, considering the underperformance of its own source revenue collected over the years. Mr. Speaker, this statement is very urgent. There is an attempt to sell assets of Nairobi County belonging to the people of Nairobi. Mr. Speaker, even in the intervening period, this must not be allowed to happen until the governor, the NMS, and all of these agencies come before the Senate, because we protect devolution and we protect the assets of Nairobians and Kenyans. So I ask that you direct the committee to act in speed, and that before that is done, not a single centimeter of land owned by Nairobians, not a single piece of machinery should be allowed to be sold to cover assets, because this could also be an insidious ploy for other reasons, and I will not impute improper motive. But Mr. Speaker, this is very urgent, and I beg again by the power of your chair to direct that it is dealt with, and in the intervening period no action is taken in sale of assets of the people of Nairobi County, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Senator, what is it, Senator Kajwang?
Mr. Speaker, it's not coming to Devolution Committee. I think the statement was directed to the Finance Committee. But Mr. Speaker, I wanted to, just as someone who has dealt with similar matters in the past, Mr. Speaker, when I chaired the Public Accounts Committee, the then governor of Nairobi, Governor Mike Sonko, came before the Senate and explained the circumstances under which the 4 billion, which I think now has become a 5 billion loan, were incurred. Mr. Speaker, there are reports that we have brought to this House with very clear recommendations that the Public Accounts Committee brought to this House. Part of what we need to do is to see to the implementation of some of those recommendations. If I recall, Mr. Speaker, the governor for Nairobi came to the Senate and informed us that because a third bank was offering better rates, Mr. Speaker, the original loan was taken from Equity Bank. And then along the way, they made a decision to sell the loan to KCB Bank. And along the way, they made another decision to sell the loan to UBA Bank. The interest rate on this loan, at a time when we had interest rate controls, Mr. Speaker, the interest rate on this loan was almost 30%, at a time when the average interest rate was 12 to 14%. Because there was something that had been applied called penal interest, that the county had delayed in making their installments, and so the county was paying almost 30%. Mr. Speaker, just to inform Senator Sakaja, the impact of that penal interest and the impact of the interest on that loan means that everything that is collected from Gikomba market, from our mothers, from those hustlers, from those sufferers, all the collections, daily collections from Gikomba market, does not go to develop the city. It goes to refinance that loan. And Mr. Speaker, this is one of the biggest scandals that we have seen in this country. Mr. Speaker, Nairobi City County is one big crime scene. And the things that are going on in Nairobi City County, for the information of the House, tomorrow we will be meeting the Director General of Nairobi Metropolitan Service in this chamber, the Governor of Nairobi City County in this chamber, the Cabinet Secretary for Lands in this chamber. Mr. Speaker, crazy things are going on. Land is changing hands. I don't know what happened to our National Lands Commission. I don't know what happened to Nairobi City County Assembly. But the mandarins in that county are transferring land to individuals at whim. Mr. Speaker, how I wish that the timelines for report on this particular matter could be truncated. When this session started today, Mr. Speaker, I think earlier in the morning, Senator Wambua had asked the Speaker to direct that some statements should be responded to in a speedy manner. How I wish that this statement by Senator Sakaja could be dealt with within the next 7 days, because a lot of evil things are going on, especially as people are looking at end of term, as people are looking at end of deeds of transfer, and as those people who are sitting in those offices are looking at a dark future politically after the next general election. Mr. Speaker, would I be in order that you rule that this matter be dealt with within the next 7 days, and if possible, be addressed not just by the Finance Committee, but by the Committee of the Whole?
Senator Cherargei.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, it's hard to speak after one of the best CPIC chair that we ever had in our term and in the history. And I've read some of the recommendations. They are very serious, and if we were to implement, and want to wish him well in future endeavors. Mr. Speaker, what I'm just saying is...
The only thing that he did, he spoke like a minister, the way he was complaining.
As a Minister of Finance.
Proceed.
Yes, and I wish him well. I think he was very effective, and the recommendations that he used to make then as a committee, he did well, and he has spoken very well. Mr. Speaker, the issue that shocks me, because there is a matter that I once took before I was elected to Eldoret High Court on where the Nandi County government then did borrow, tried to internal borrowing, and there was a circular that was issued by Ministry of Treasury that no county would go ahead and borrow loan without guarantee, either by the national government, be it local or international. And that matter was settled by Eldoret High Court. I don't know how far, but the Ministry of Treasury, Mr. Speaker, had given out, looking at Nairobi, 76.9 billion is mind-boggling. Why would they borrow this? What are they doing with it? It looks like, as my brothers have said, Nairobi is the theater of all crimes that is happening and is making devolution look very bad, Mr. Speaker. Because this 76.9 billion that has been acquired through loans, there is no one that can give us a way forward on this. And you know, now we were being told when NMS is being formed, it will assist the efficiency and effectiveness of Nairobi City County. But what has happened? Corruption had tripled. Corruption is now the order of day in Nairobi City County. Yet we were being told when you have a general, when you have a military taking over Nairobi City Council, Mr. Speaker, and in fact it is through your seat that you even ruled then that the NMS was not operating within the Constitution. But that one, the ruling was made, the courts made the same ruling, Mr. Speaker. But it's very unfortunate that we were being told that NMS will be the antidote of the ills in Nairobi, be it corruption, be it lack of water, be it issues of sanitation and sewerage, issues of traffic management within the city. But unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, a quasi of 76.9 billion, and you'll not be shocked, Mr. Speaker, and I doubt I heard the chair of devolution, my brother Senator Moses Kajwang, saying the Director General will appear before the Senate. I'm telling you, he's not a lieutenant, he's not the commander of the armed forces in the country. A general will only appear before the commander-in-chief. He will not appear before a committee. I think there are procedures that within military. Mr. Speaker, finally, on the issue of KCB, and I think KCB has come on crosshairs. You remember the issue of Inua Jamii. There is a statement that Senator Sakaja's committee has on this issue. How can a bank give out 4.4 billion to our county government without proper guarantee by the national government? How can they? It looks at KCB, and you can see, Mr. Speaker, without being prejudiced, most of those issues being raised. And I remember when the former governor, Governor Mike Sonko, appeared, there was also an issue of KCB in then. When Senator Kajwang was chairing. When you go everywhere, there is always prints of KCB in some of these fishy allegations of fishy deals within loaning of county governments, issues of Inua Jamii. KCB has been mentioned in most of these instances, and I think that the KCB must come clean, because we don't want a situation we are auctioning. Finally, on the issue of assets and liabilities, I think there is the issue of asset register. We need to consult so that we can know. It is very unfortunate when National Land Commission and the Ministry of Lands came into face, we were bidden, Ministry of Lands were doing digitalization of land transaction, of land acquisition. And Mr. Speaker, I remember the Law Society of Kenya tried to resist. We were being advised by the National Land Commission and Ministry of Lands that it will be digitized. But when you watch news daily, Mr. Speaker, sir, there is at least 1 or 2 places, and I think that matter came to the Committee of Health. There is 1 or 2 places that grabiosis and grabbing of land is happening in Nairobi. And we had National Land Commission. As the area senator said, we have a problem because people are losing their land. People, I saw a Mzungu, some landowner of origin of European was being evicted, Mr. Speaker, because of the land had been allegedly transferred in a irregular manner. So, Mr. Speaker, when the governor appears before this committee, and when I don't know whether the general will appear, we don't know, because we are not the army, and you know they will take about the protocol in the army, but when he appears, he must tell us what 76.9 billion will happen. And Governor Sakaja is here, sorry, Senator Sakaja is here. We hope he will not pay back this loan if these people do not explain how this loan was acquired. I want to beseech to Senator Sakaja, God willing, if he becomes the governor, he should not pay this money until we are told what really happened. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. I direct that this statement be taken to Committee of Finance, and the report should be brought in this House in 21 days. So directed. For the convenience of this House, I want to rearrange the business of the House, and we go to order number 22.
Order number 22, the Persons with Disabilities Amendment Bill, Senate Bills number 29 of 2020, second reading.
Senator Isaac Mwaura. He's online. Senator Mwaura. Senator Mwaura, can you hear us? Senator Maura, proceed. Senator Maura. Honorable Senators, I will defer order number 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, and 22. We go to order number 23, and I can't see the mover. Order number 24 as well, I can't see the mover. Order number 25. What is out of order, Senator Kajwang?
Mr. Speaker, I sympathize greatly with Senator Mwaura, who repeatedly on the floor of this House and in the other communication channels we have as senators has complained about the difficulties in contributing whenever this House is in a hybrid session. Mr. Speaker, we must be honest with each other. The hybrid session should not just be seen as a voting machine. It only works when people are voting. It does not work when people are contributing. I have previously tried to contribute online. Sometimes even getting the eye of the speaker is not that easy as it is in the House. And I think that senators also need to be given an explanation. Why 2 years down the line, since the advent of COVID, we have not found a proper solution, a proper legislative platform that can ensure confidentiality of our discussions, the integrity of our communications, and you know, all those attributes that you need when using technology in such a sensitive setting. Mr. Speaker, at some point we were told that we were developing a proprietary platform by the Parliamentary Service Commission, which then would replace the Zoom that everyone can access. I think, Mr. Speaker, this legislature, because Kenyans and the entire world holds it in extremely high esteem, Mr. Speaker, even if it's not for this parliament, but for the next parliament, because I wouldn't wish that we scrap the hybrid approach, but for the next parliament, we must make the right investments. Senator Mwaura consistently tries to connect, and I don't think it's for lack of bundles, Mr. Speaker. And many other senators, sometimes they try to contribute. And I don't know, I don't want to say that the gentlemen and ladies sitting at the clerk's office only make it work during voting. No, it's just because during voting the whips work more aggressively. But Mr. Speaker, I hope that when a member attempts to contribute online and they are moving a bill and there are technology challenges, then that order is deferred the way you have rightfully done. The order is not dropped. But those who sometimes favor the hybrid approach, Mr. Speaker, they are really suffering. And I hope that the administrative arm of this parliament will give us some assurances. Some of us are experts in these subjects. And if the way we consult our senior counsels on legal matters, if we just looked at the members of this house, there are people with serious competencies on some of these things. Technology and digital platforms. We can provide help pro bono so that we can secure the best, the most robust, the most efficient solution to avoid the kind of frustrations that Senator Mwaura and others have been facing. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Kajwang, you have been heard loud and clear. What is it, Senator Cherargei?
Mr. Speaker, even locally, we have a problem with the system. That's why I can imagine. Mr. Speaker, what I wanted to seek your direction is I had raised on yesterday on the issue of order number 25, or the motion adoption of the report of the Standing Committee on Health on the special audit report on utilization of COVID-19 funds by 28 county governments. Mr. Speaker, if you have noticed, and I hope a number of in SBC, this motion or this order has been on the order paper for the longest time possible. I thought there was a direction from your chair that if a statement, motion, or bill overstays without the mover of that motion or bill, then they are obligated to drop, Mr. Speaker, because personally, I've been religiously attending sessions hoping that the Employment Amendment Act of 2021, where employers should not call their employees beyond 5 p.m. in the evening. And I would really have wanted to move. Why don't these people who are, Mr. Speaker, the SBC should liaise with the movers. The day they are available, their order be put on their matter be put on the order. So that if people like Senator Sakaja, myself, Senator Kajwang, the Siaya Governor, Senator James Orengo, can have a point, Mr. Speaker, of when they are appearing in the House, they tell us, we appreciate that, Mr. Speaker, most of us are busy with the campaign schedules and here and there meetings, but Mr. Speaker, let us not have an order overstaying. On the issue of COVID, Mr. Speaker, some of us want really to know what happened with the COVID funds. Most Kenyans died, Mr. Speaker. Most Kenyans lost their jobs. Most Kenyans lost their businesses. And the COVID funds were supposed to use to trade them, to ensure their properties are lying, to ensure that their business is back on track. We would really want to know what happened with our COVID funds, so that when we go to the election, Mr. Speaker, our voters should know if a governor misused the COVID funds, like what happened in Nandi, they should not see back their seat, Mr. Speaker. I thank you.
Thank you, Senator Cherargei. What is it, Senator Sakaja?
Mr. Speaker, on both of these issues, the coming of COVID-19, I think, was a curse, but also a blessing. And Mr. Speaker, if you remember, at that time I was chairing the ADO committee looking at COVID. And we were the first at that time in the history of this country, since people used to sit in traditional parliaments or councils. We were the first to ever use virtual. We introduced virtual sittings in my committee, and we used the Zoom platform. Mr. Speaker, at that time, I remember, because we were the focal point for this country on all matters, COVID, technology, food, energy, transport, whatnot. Very serious companies actually came and offered the Senate and Parliament solutions that would be more secure as their contribution in dealing with the pandemic, Mr. Speaker. And I did my part. I actually, connected them. I don't know if people thought I was looking for a tender or something. They were offering just for us to continue, because we had suspended Parliament. We had suspended the voice of the people. And we said, you cannot suspend it, but technology can help us. Mr. Speaker, it has been good for our committees. I've never seen such quorum when I'm chairing committees. You have a senator in Nyamira, one is in Mombasa, one is in Kajiado, and you have a meeting, you have 9 members. But I think it's come to a point that instead of using this cheap free software that is prone to a lot of, interference and instability, Mr. Speaker, as Parliament, we must be creative. And we don't even need to engage these big companies. That this now becomes another tender of billions for Microsoft or for Oracle or SAP or those people. No. The young people of this country, Mr. Speaker, we passed the startup bill here. The young people of this country, if tomorrow you say that we're inviting any young, startup or companies or young people to do a hacker space to come and innovate for a seamless virtual parliament, Mr. Speaker, you'll have hundreds of applications with simulations of what we can do. Why do we ignore the vibrancy and innovation we have in this country? If you go today to the NILAB, you'll see young people. Go to the iHub. There's even innovation hubs in Turkana, in the coast. Our young people have these ideas, but they know, it'll be a tender that'll go to the Parliamentary Service Commission, and the big boys will come in the manner that they've always come, and it goes. Yet our young people can do it. Mr. Speaker, I think it's a discussion we should have. I think at SBC, I don't think you can give direction on that. Though, of course, I'm not limiting your powers. You can't give direction. Because since 2018, we've not been able to vote using these electronic devices. What are they here for? These machines that cost hundreds of millions. Here, we vote through roll call. Why? In 2022. Yet you should just say yes or no, and we vote in a minute. For our bills in the Senate, every amendment, every clause you have to vote, people are lining up to be called from Senator Dulo to Senator Tangula, alphabetically. Yet we have technology. In fact, we did a serious audit of the Parliamentary Service Commission. These facilities should be working. But, Mr. Speaker, I sympathize with Senator Maura, and I agree. Senator Kajwang is an expert in this field. Many of us have some expertise here and there in this field. Let us innovate and let us use the strength of our young people. If today we just say young people from Nairobi or Homa Bay want to come up with a solution, they have those solutions. But number two, Mr. Speaker, from what Senator Cherargei is saying, indeed, as SBC we said, if a person does not move his report, it is dropped. But this is an important report. That might be a ploy to drop it. We want the truth. This one must have an exception. This is not a report to be dropped. This is about misuse of COVID funds. We don't want it to be dropped. We want that discussion to come. And Mr. Speaker, the direction you must give is that if the chair is not available to move this report, any member of that committee should be able to move it. And if there's no member in the next sitting, any member in the House can move it. Because the report has been tabled. We all know how to read. But let us not try and use these tactics to evade the discussion around this report, Mr. Speaker. We want it discussed in full detail. And for your information, Senator Cherargei, your bill on the employment amendment we've concluded on it as Labour Committee. Our report is done. We have said let members come and decide. It's a very new place in terms of labor relations that is talking about. That after working hours, you disconnect. I don't know how some people will implement that. If you have not agreed with your, so if you're a house help, how do you disconnect at 5? You won't even boil water for your boss at 6. But it's an interesting discussion. The world is moving there. We've seen it in Poland, in Belgium. But we are finished. And Mr. Speaker, with your discretion, you can actually schedule it for debate on the House. No, tomorrow. It can be debated tomorrow. Since you seem so eager to debate it, and we've already passed it. And by that time, the report will be in the House. But Mr. Speaker, please, let's be creative. These young people who are now stealing rice and going into border, they're people with degrees and ideas. But now we're going to do a tender for for a virtual system so that the big boys can do it, yet young people can do it, Mr. Speaker. That is the frustration that is leading to decay in our country's fabric. And that's why you're seeing them meting it out on innocent people, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Senators, we have heard you. What you're saying is very true. And we have heard you. Order number 25. The mover is not there, so this order is deferred. Honorable Senators, there being no any other business on the order paper, the Senate stands adjourned until Thursday, 10
Mimi niko tayari. Roho ya Kwame lazima tuachane nayo kabisa.
Una uwezo sawa na maadui zako.
Kuna kitu na mwangalifu, msiseme mimi sikuambia.
Ukiwa na shida nitakwambia, tushirikiane.
Mimi nimeshindwa sasa. Sijui hata mama anaugua nini.
Nafikiri umezirai. Uko sawa?
I think I know what is going on.
Really?
Can you tell me what happened? Huh? First they drove you out of the house, and now he's getting a divorce from you? Don't they know that Jack's the one to blame for all of this?
I won't let them get away with any of this.
Easton's going to face 3 years in prison.
No way! You can't do this to my brother! Thank you. Thank you.
The way I see it, your dad is going to leave all his money to her unborn baby.
Mundos divididos por una sombra de traición.
Ended up becoming the one thing I am most proud of in my life. The greatest son that a father could ever wish for.
You had no right embarrassing my grandson the way you did, when the only thing that he ever did was to love you and give you everything that he had. You had no right.
You found her. Good afternoon.
Just leave him. Just tell him you want a divorce.
Don't you dare!
Lying heart. Pues sembrando el veneno y la ambición.
Oh, hi! I'm so glad you're here. I truly duly am. I was just putting away my hippoblat. You see, I sleep with my hippoblat every night. I brought it from home, and when I sleep with it, I feel like I'm at home in my very own bed. Do you have a hippoblat too? Probably not, but I'll bet you have something you like to sleep with at night. If you have your special something, go get it. Then come right back, because we're going on a sleepover with Max.